Good morning, friends, and welcome to Take Two for this Tuesday, the 11th of September, 2018, a day that we will always remember. I don't have to tell you what today represents. So, fellow Americans, for those of you who are my fellow Americans, and also for those of you who are friendly with America, friendly American friends to Americans, I just have to say this is a day we will never ever forget. So I'm a little more serious today. Not that I'm not always serious. I know sometimes I get silly on these segments, but today is something, a day that as an American, as a native New York City resident, I have to say that my heart goes out today to those who lost loved ones, those who went through their own tortures and troubles and brokenheartedness because of the atrocities that transpired 17 years ago today. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about my friend Joe. Now, I had actually a number of friends, relatives, and acquaintances who worked in the towers, around the towers, who worked in that downtown area. And actually, I do know people from school that I went to high school with who perished in the towers. My mother went to a grief support group when my dad died 6 months after the September 11th happened, and so she went to grief group with a number of people who lost people on September the 11th. The cemetery where my parents are buried in Staten Island have a number of people who perished in September 11th. So it is something that is near and dear to my heart, because lest we forget, we shall never forget. But back to Joe. Now, my friend Joe I've known since we were teenagers. We actually sold shoes together in the Staten Island Mall at National Shoe Store. And he was also the next door neighbor to my sister's boyfriend. So there was a lot of a connection with Joe. And he ended up, and to this very day, I could consider him one of my dearest and closest friends. Well, Joe worked in the Twin Towers. He worked at the World Trade Center. And I worked across the street at the Merrill Lynch building up on the 43rd floor. So from my office building, I could look straight out and see the towers right in front of me, the 43rd floor of the Twin Towers just outside my window. So we used to ride to work on the ferry and train, or walk together, you know, in the city. And then we would try to meet at least once, maybe twice a week for lunch. Quite often we would meet. Now I have this statue of the Twin Towers that we got. It was actually constructed with some scrap from the Twin Towers. It has very special meaning to me. But right here is a little, like a little court, little seating area with benches. You can't really tell, but there was a little seating area with benches, and Joe and I would meet there, and we would have lunch. Sometimes we'd get pizza or sandwiches or whatever, and we'd sit and we'd, you know, have lunch together. So long after I left New York to move to the West Coast, Joe continued working at the Twin Towers, and he worked for a company that actually, the company that he worked for had two floors, the 26th and the 103rd of the one tower that he worked in. So he was primarily, his desk and his office was on the 26th, but countless times during the day he'd be in that elevator going up and down to the 103rd. So when the towers got hit, the first thing I could think of was Joe. Oh my gosh, where's Joe? What happened to Joe? So it was on my mind all day long, and he didn't have a cell phone at the time. Not everybody had cell phones back in 2001. So the only phone number I had for him was his landline of his apartment in New York. And so I just kept trying and trying and trying to call his apartment, and all it would do was ring. So, of course, I was greatly concerned because he could have been anywhere. Now, understand, Joe worked for an international company. Most people in those office buildings worked like a regular 9 to 5 job. The first tower got hit at 8:45 in the morning. Joe's company, because it was an international company, he had to be into work much earlier, like 7:30 or 8 o'clock. So chances are he was working at the time of the first hit. But I didn't remember which building he worked in. Was it the South Tower? Was it the North Tower? Was it the one that got hit first? Was it the one who got hit second? Did they have time to get people out? Was he on the top floor or was he on the lower floor? All these thoughts went through my mind all day long. And my dad was still living at the time, and I actually told them about it. Oddly enough, they were in Staten Island, and they didn't have the TV on. And normally my father always watched. He was a news junkie, of course, because he was a newsman, and he was retired by then, and he didn't have the TV on that morning. Oddly enough, he had turned off the TV to do some other thing in the house, and they didn't even know. So I called them and said, "Are you okay?" And they said, "We're fine." "Why? Shouldn't you be at work right now? Why are you calling us?" And I said, "Don't you know what happened?" And they said, "No, we don't know what happened." And so my mother opened the side door of our house, and she started seeing debris floating in the sky. They didn't realize that it happened because they were in Staten Island, but the winds were blowing the debris all the way to Staten Island from downtown Manhattan. So they turned the TV on immediately, and of course, the rest is history. So I was trying to get Joe all day long. No answer, no answer, no answer. Finally, right before I went to bed, I thought I'll try one more time. And it was about 10 o'clock at night. And I called, and it rang about 3 or 4 times. And then suddenly I heard, "Hello," and it was Joe's voice. And all I could do was burst out in tears. And I said, "Joe, it's Jeannie. Are you okay?" And he said, I'm just devastated, of course. He said, "But yes, I am okay." So I was just so happy to know that Joe was okay. And I thought to myself, you know what? I am so grateful that he is all right. But sadly, there are so many people who we're going to hear from that it's not okay. And so I just want to say this to you today, boys and girls. Don't ever forget the wonderful freedoms that we have. Don't ever forget what a wonderful nation we have. And even though the enemies try to get us, the bad guys try to beat us down, we will never, ever, ever forget what a great nation it is to live in, and how grateful I am that Joe is okay. Now, did it take Joe a good long time to get over what happened? Why, yes, it did. Some of the people that he worked with never did quite get over it. But he pressed on, he pushed on, he got some help, he joined in with others who are of like-minded, and he even went back a few days after as kind of like a help team, as a volunteer, because he wanted to do his part. You know, a lot of bad things are going to happen in this world. There are going to be evil people out there. There are going to be bad guys who try to get the good guys. But I think the best way that I could sum it up is the little quote that's on this plaque right here on this little statue that I ordered. And it's from, at the time, it was President George W. Bush, if you remember, during this attack. And he said this, I'm going to quote former President George W. Bush. He said, "We will not waver. We will not tire. We will not falter. We will not fail. Peace and freedom will prevail." So boys and girls, having been to third world countries and having been to places where there aren't as many freedoms, don't take your freedom for granted. God bless America. You know, go be a blessing to somebody today. You might be the only one who is. You know, when Joe was out there and he was helping others in the midst of this tragedy, because he was helping and helping and helping all day long till he finally got home that night, he never ceased to do that. He was a blessing to other people. And Joe, you continue to be a blessing in my life. And I'm just so grateful that I can call you my friend. And I'm so grateful that you weren't taken from us that day like so many were. So go be a blessing. Remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel at Jeanne Sigler, JeanneSigler. Please don't forget to do that, okay? And then also, one more thing. Don't forget to tune into my radio station. We're going to be talking about this a little bit today at WRMZ.org. Okay, I'm going to leave you with just this, okay? From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. I love you. I'll see you tomorrow, okay? Bye-bye.